My girlfriend said, "My friends don't like you, so we need to break up." I replied, "Good, then you can join them." The way they all stared at her after I left told me everything. So my girlfriend, ex-girlfriend now I guess, just ended our 2-year relationship because her friends don't like me. And the worst part, I think I've been okay with that for months without realizing it. Here's the background. I'm Noah. I work in cybersecurity incident response for a fintech company in San Francisco. Pretty standard tech bro stuff. I analyze security breaches, respond to incidents, write reports. I'm generally a calm person. I don't do drama, I think things through, and I prefer quiet nights over loud bars. That's going to be important later. My now ex is Katie. She's a content producer for this increasingly popular podcast called Unapologetically Her. When we started dating 2 years ago, she was different. We'd go to indie shows, hole-in-the-wall cafes, quiet hikes in Marin. She was thoughtful, introspective, really present. We moved in together about 8 months ago and things were good. Or so I thought. The shift started when the podcast really took off. The host, Regina, is one of those charismatic thought leader types. She's smart, engaging, has this way of making everything she says sound profound. The podcast is all about modern dating, feminism, boundaries, toxic relationships, that kind of content. And as it got more popular, I noticed Katie starting to. I don't know how to describe it. Rebrand herself. She got more dramatic, started having stronger opinions about things she used to be neutral on, began talking in these podcast-friendly sound bites. That should have been my first clue. The friend group is tight. There's Regina, the host, Brooke, the editor, Tara works in HR somewhere, and a rotating cast of other women who all live in the Mission or Soma. They're constantly talking about red flags, boundaries, toxic energy. Which, look, I'm all for healthy boundaries. But when every conversation starts sounding like a therapy session mixed with a TED Talk, it gets exhausting. I first met them all at a live podcast recording about 6 months ago. Katie wanted me there for support. The episode was about dating in your 30s or something. After the show, Regina came up to chat. She asked what I do, and when I mentioned cybersecurity, she literally made a face and said, "So you're like corporate surveillance but in a hoodie." The whole group laughed. I tried to laugh it off, but it stung. That night, they all went to this after-party at a bar in the Mission. The whole time, they were doing this thing where they'd tell stories about terrible men they dated or heard about, and I'd try to contribute to the conversation, offer some perspective. Every time I spoke, I'd get these looks, like I was the subject being studied, not part of the group. On the drive home, Katie said, "The girls think you're emotionally unavailable. They said you don't share enough." I was confused because I'd literally spent an hour that night talking about my childhood, my relationship with my parents, work stress. But apparently because I wasn't crying or being vulnerable in the exact way they expected, I was closed off. That became a pattern. Any small disagreement Katie and I had, and I mean small, like should we get Indian or Thai food, would somehow make it onto the podcast. Katie would bring it up to the group, they'd dissect it, and then I'd hear about it third hand through passive-aggressive comments. Regina started calling me data guy on the show, using me as an example of men who try to micromanage your calendar, because I'd suggested we plan a trip in advance instead of last minute. It didn't feel like a relationship anymore. It felt like a case study I hadn't consented to be in. Here's where it gets worse. I'm not a big party person. I don't love crowded bars where you can't hear yourself think, and I'm not into these performative hangouts where everyone's half engaged and half scrolling Instagram. I suggested to Katie a few times that maybe we could do smaller things, dinner parties, game nights, hiking with 1 or 2 couples. She'd agree, but then the friend group would find out and I'd become the controlling boyfriend who was isolating her. Every time I didn't go to one of their events, it would come up on the podcast. If your partner skips girls' nights, that's a red flag. They never said my name, but Katie would come home and be weird with me, like she was apologizing to them on my behalf. I tried to play along. I really did. I brought board games to one of their hangouts. Everyone was on their phones, half playing, half scrolling TikTok. When I pointed out we should maybe put phones away to actually play, Brooke laughed and said, "This feels like a workshop, not fun." The whole group agreed. I was trying too hard, so I was in this impossible position. If I stayed quiet and just existed in the background, I was distant and emotionally unavailable. If I tried to engage or suggest activities, I was controlling or trying too hard. There was no way to win. A few weeks ago, Katie came home a little tipsy from one of their wine nights. She was scrolling through her phone, laughing at messages. I asked what was funny and she said, "Oh, Regina's just doing her thing." Then she said something that made my stomach drop. She says your word choice in texts is low-key manipulative. I stopped. "How does Regina know what I text you?" Katie got this look, half guilty, half defensive. She admitted that Regina had been analyzing our text conversations, not just reading them but breaking them down, pulling out specific phrases I'd used, sharing them in the group chat. Apparently they'd even played my voice messages on speaker to analyze my tone. I'm in cybersecurity. I take privacy seriously. The idea that my private conversations were being dissected by a group of people I barely knew made me feel violated. But when I said that, Katie got defensive. "They're just trying to help me see patterns. You're being paranoid." I let it go because I didn't want to fight, but I couldn't shake the feeling. A few days later, Katie left her iPad at home while she went to work. A notification popped up. I wasn't snooping, it was just there on the screen. It was from their group chat. The preview said, "Clip 3, him saying we can do our own thing tonight," classic isolation phrase. Clip 3. They weren't just judging me. They were collecting evidence for a story they'd already decided to tell. I didn't say anything to Katie that day. I needed to think. Part of me wondered if I was overreacting. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized how insane it was. My girlfriend's friends were treating our relationship like a research project, and she was letting them. Last night, Katie asked me to meet her at this rooftop bar near where they record the podcast. I knew something was coming. She had that look, the one she gets when she's rehearsed something. We sat down. She ordered a drink. Then she said it, "My friends don't like you. They think you're limiting me. I can't ignore that. We need to break up." I felt this weird calm wash over me. Not anger, not sadness, just clarity. I looked at her and said, "Good. Then you can join them." I stood up, paid for both our drinks at the bar, walked over to the table where Regina, Brooke, and Tara were sitting, because of course they were there, probably recording the whole thing, said, "Nice knowing you all," and left. As I was walking out, I glanced back. The three of them were staring at Katie with these expressions I can't quite describe. Not satisfaction, not happiness, something closer to shock, maybe even discomfort. Like they'd pushed a button expecting one thing and got something else entirely. Katie looked small sitting there, and for the first time in months, her friends weren't smiling. I've been at my buddy's place since last night. I keep replaying it in my head. The relationship was probably over the moment Katie started valuing their opinions more than her own instincts. But still, part of me wonders if I should have fought harder. Another part of me feels relieved it's done. Has anyone else dealt with something like this, where your partner's friends basically run the relationship? I don't even know what I'm asking. I just needed to write this out. Update 1. Posted 2 weeks later. Okay, so I didn't expect to post again, but some stuff has happened that I think people following this might want to know about. Also, I need to process it somewhere because this has gotten weird. First off, thanks to everyone who commented on my original post. The validation helped more than I expected. A lot of you were right about the recording thing being sketchy, and it turns out it was even worse than I thought. So about a week after the breakup, I was at work trying to focus on a security incident, and my coworker Jamie came over to my desk. She's 28, super into podcasts, always has earbuds in. She looked uncomfortable and said, "Dude, I need to ask you something weird. Are you the data guy on Unapologetically Her?" My brain buffered for a second. "What?" She pulled out her phone and played me a clip from their latest episode. It was titled something like "When Soft Control Becomes Hard Boundaries" or some buzzword soup like that. And there it was, Regina talking about a case study of a man who used subtle isolation tactics to control his girlfriend. She didn't use my name, but she used exact phrases I'd said, word for word, but completely stripped of context, edited to sound sinister. The comments section was full of people diagnosing me. Textbook covert narcissist. My ex did this exact thing. They were tearing apart a version of me that didn't exist. I felt sick. Jamie looked at me and said, "If that's you, you need to know they're butchering you." I thanked her and told her I'd handle it. I didn't know how to handle it. I'm not a lawsuit guy. I just wanted it to stop. That night I couldn't sleep, so I downloaded the episode and took screenshots of the transcript and comments, just in case. I don't know what I thought I'd do with them, but it felt important to document. 2 days later, I got a DM on Instagram from Brooke, the editor, the one who was always just nodding along with whatever Regina said. The message started with, "I'm sorry, I think you should see this." She sent me screenshots, a lot of them. The first was from their internal Slack, the podcast team's private workspace. I could see messages from months ago. Regina wrote, "We need a controlling man archetype for next season. Makes the content relatable." Someone replied asking if they had anyone in mind. Regina responded, "Katie's boyfriend is perfect, quiet, overthinks, doesn't push back, we can spin that." There was more. A Google Drive folder titled Noah Examples. I felt my hands start shaking. The folder had a list of voice messages I'd sent Katie, casual stuff. "Can we have a quiet night, just us? If you're tired, I can pick you up." Next to each one there were notes. Brooke had written on one, "He sounds normal here." Regina's reply, "Context, Brooke, it's about pattern. They were building a case against me like I was a suspect." Brooke sent a follow-up message, "I've been uncomfortable with this for a while. You weren't the first." She explained that Regina has been doing this for years. Every guy Katie dated before me got the same treatment, recorded, analyzed, turned into content. Regina would find the villain angle and run with it. The podcast thrived on real-life drama, and Katie's dating life was the fuel. I didn't know what to say. I just sent back, "Why are you telling me this now?" She replied, "Because it finally caught up to them." Apparently, after they released the episode about me, the comments section split. Some people believed Regina completely, but others, people who knew me indirectly or just had better bullshit detectors, started questioning the narrative. "This guy sounds pretty normal. Are we sure we're getting the full story?" A few people pointed out that the podcast never interviewed the men they talked about, which was a pretty big red flag for a show that claimed to be about accountability. One of the podcast's corporate sponsors saw the episode and the comments. They got nervous. If this was defamation, the sponsor could be liable too. They contacted the media company that produces the podcast and asked for an internal review. The review happened fast. HR dug into how the content was sourced. They found the Drive folder. They found the Slack messages. They found evidence that the team had been recording people, not just me, but other men in the extended friend group without their knowledge and using it for content. That's illegal in California, like seriously illegal. Katie got called into HR. She wasn't the host, but she was directly involved. She'd been feeding her relationship to the show. They gave her an option: resign voluntarily or be terminated for cause. She took the mutual separation. Regina got suspended pending further investigation. The sponsor pulled funding. The podcast went on hiatus, citing restructuring. Brooke told me all of this over a series of messages. She sounded genuinely remorseful. She said she'd been uncomfortable for months but didn't speak up because Regina was her boss and the podcast was her job. She was afraid of being cut out, becoming the next target. I get it, I guess. Doesn't make it right, but I get it. I sat with that information for a few days. I didn't feel happy. I didn't feel vindicated. I just felt tired. This whole thing, Katie, the friend group, the podcast, it wasn't a relationship. It was content farming. They turned real people into characters, real conversations into episodes, and when the characters stopped being useful, they got written out. I haven't heard from Katie directly. Part of me wonders if she's okay. Another part of me thinks she made her choice when she let her friends dictate our relationship. Either way, I'm not reaching out. I did respond to Brooke. I told her I appreciated her coming forward, even if it was late. She said she's looking for other work. Regina's reputation in the SF media scene is tanking, and Brooke doesn't want to go down with the ship. Someone in the comments on my original post said, "The trash took itself out." I didn't fully believe it then. I think I do now. Edit. A lot of people are asking if I'm going to sue. Honest answer, I don't know. I talked to a lawyer friend who said I probably have a case for invasion of privacy, maybe defamation if I could prove damages. But litigation is expensive, time-consuming, and emotionally draining. Right now, I just want to move on. The podcast is dead in the water anyway. That feels like enough. Update 2. I wasn't planning on posting again, but the last few weeks have been a lot. So here we are. Buckle up because this gets messier before it gets better. About 2 weeks ago, I got a text from Katie. Just, "Can we talk? I owe you an apology. Coffee." I didn't respond right away. Part of me wanted closure, another part thought it was a terrible idea. I did agree eventually. We met at this cafe in Hayes Valley that we used to go to back when things were good. She looked rough, tired, like she hadn't been sleeping well. We sat down, and before I could even say anything, she started, "I'm so sorry. I need you to know that." She told me she'd been going to therapy. She'd been forced to confront a lot of stuff, about herself, about Regina, about how she'd let her entire sense of reality get filtered through other people's opinions. She said when the podcast fell apart and she lost her job, she didn't just lose income. She lost her identity. The friend group fractured. No one was talking to Regina. Brooke and Tara were distant. The whole ecosystem that had defined Katie's life for years just collapsed. She admitted that at first she'd been happy with me, really happy, but Regina kept saying things like, "He's dulling your edge, and you're more interesting when you're angry." Every time Katie would tell a story about us having a nice, quiet weekend, Regina would find a way to reframe it as a warning sign. That's isolation. That's control. And because Regina was so confident, so articulate, Katie started believing it. I pulled out my phone and showed her the screenshots Brooke had sent me. Katie's face went pale. She said Regina had told her they were just taking notes for the show, nothing invasive. She had no idea there was a full folder dedicated to breaking me down. There was this long silence. Then she said, "I didn't lose you because of who you are. I lost you because I needed an audience more than I needed a partner." It hit me then how sad the whole thing was. Katie wasn't a villain. She was just someone who got so caught up in validation from the podcast, from Regina, from the online audience that she forgot how to trust her own judgment. I told her I appreciated the apology but that we couldn't go back. Too much had happened. She nodded. She'd expected that. We finished our coffee and parted ways. I thought that was the end of it. I really did. Then about a week ago, I got another message from Brooke. This time the message just said, "You need to see this. I don't even know what to say." She sent me screenshots again, but these were different, much different. When Regina was forced out of the podcast, the parent media company did a full audit of her work accounts before wiping them. It cloned her laptop to make sure there wasn't any other legally questionable content. And they found something. A folder buried deep in her personal files labeled Letters. Inside that folder were dozens of documents. Letters, journal entries, notes, all written by Regina to Katie, except Katie had never seen them. They were drafts, confessions, things Regina had written but never sent. And the contents were, honestly, I don't even know how to describe it. One of the early letters, dated 7 years ago, right around when Regina and Katie first became close, said, "I've been in love with you since junior year. I know you don't see me that way, and I've made peace with it. But I need you to know that no man will ever understand you the way I do." There were more. Years of letters. In one, Regina outlined how she'd subtly undermined Katie's previous relationships. She'd take something a boyfriend said, twist it just enough, and then present it to Katie as a red flag. She'd manufactured drama for the podcast, sure, but it wasn't just about content. It was about keeping Katie single, keeping Katie close. The one about me was the worst. Regina wrote, "He's the most dangerous one. She's too calm around him. She laughs without performing. She doesn't feel the need to be on when they're together. If I don't do something, she'll leave. Not just me. She'll leave the show, the life we built, everything. I can't let that happen." So that's what this was. It wasn't about protecting Katie from toxic men. It was about protecting Regina's access to Katie. Every boyfriend, every relationship, Regina saw them as threats. And she used the podcast, the friend group, the whole social justice framework as a weapon to eliminate those threats. She dressed up obsession and control as concern and feminism. Brooke forwarded all of this to Katie, and Katie, to her credit, confronted Regina directly. I wasn't there, but Brooke told me what went down. Katie showed up at Regina's apartment and demanded an explanation. Regina initially tried to play it off as creative writing, like it was fiction or a podcast idea she'd never used. Katie pulled up one of the letters on her phone and read it out loud. "If I have to burn every bridge to keep her, I will." Regina broke down. She admitted it, all of it. She said she loved Katie and had for years. She said she couldn't help it, that every time Katie got serious with someone, it felt like losing her. Katie left. She called Brooke, Tara, and the others and told them everything. The friend group imploded. None of them had known Regina was in love with Katie. When they realized they'd been weaponized, used as tools to isolate Katie from any real relationship, most of them couldn't deal with it. Brooke and Tara tried to stay close to Katie at first, but even that was strained. Too much damage, too much betrayal. Within a couple of weeks, everyone had just kind of drifted apart. So now Katie's lost me, her job, and her entire friend group. And she's having to confront the fact that for almost a decade, her closest friend was manipulating her, sabotaging her relationships, and using a progressive, feminist podcast as cover. It's honestly one of the bleakest things I've ever heard. I haven't talked to Katie directly since the cafe meeting, and I don't plan to. I feel bad for her, I really do, but I also can't fix this. She has to figure out who she is without Regina's voice in her head. That's not my job. As for me, I'm doing okay. I moved to a different apartment closer to where I work. I'm hiking more, spending time with actual friends who don't analyze my word choice like I'm a suspect in a crime. I even went on a date last weekend. Nothing serious, just coffee. But it felt good to talk to someone who didn't have an agenda. I keep thinking about that night at the rooftop bar when Katie said her friends didn't like me. At the time, it felt like a betrayal. Now I see it differently. Her friends didn't like me because I was pulling her away from the narrative they needed. I wasn't a bad boyfriend. I was just bad for their content. And honestly, I'm fine with that. Edit. Holy shit, the response to this update. A few clarifications. Yes, Regina's behavior is absolutely stalker-level obsessive. Some of you suggested Katie should get a restraining order. I don't know if she has, but I hope she's protecting herself. To the people asking if I'll ever talk to Katie again, probably not. I wish her well, but we're done. Final update. Hey everyone. It's been almost 9 months since my first post. I honestly thought my last update would be the end of this, but some things have happened recently, and a few of you have been messaging me asking if I'm still alive. Yes, so here's where things are now. I'll try to keep this shorter than the others. First, the big news. About 3 weeks ago, I got an email from Katie. Subject line, no need to respond, just needed to say this. I almost deleted it without reading, but curiosity got the better of me. It was long, really long. She told me she'd left San Francisco entirely. She moved to Portland about 5 months ago, is working freelance social media for small local businesses, nothing big, nothing public-facing. She said she's been in therapy twice a week and cut off all contact with Regina. Completely. Blocked on everything. The restraining order came after Regina completely spiraled. After Katie confronted her about the letters, Regina started showing up places. At Katie's apartment building at 2 a.m., at the coffee shop where Katie did her freelance work. She sent hundreds of texts from different numbers after being blocked. The breaking point was when Regina drove 6 hours to Katie's parents' house in Sacramento, showed up crying, saying she just needed to make Katie understand. They were meant to be together. Katie's dad had to physically block the door while her mom called the police. The restraining order was granted immediately given the documented pattern of escalation, though the email was mostly her taking accountability. She said she'd spent months in therapy dissecting how she let Regina control her perception of reality, how she'd outsourced her decision-making to a group of people who didn't actually have her best interests at heart. She admitted that when we were together, she'd been happy, genuinely happy, but she kept questioning it because Regina told her happiness without struggle wasn't authentic. The part that got me was when she wrote, "You were never controlling, you were never emotionally unavailable, but I let someone else narrate our relationship for me and I'm so sorry. I failed you. You deserve better than that." She said she wasn't asking me to forgive her or to respond. She just needed me to know she understood finally what she'd done. I read it twice. Then I showed it to Alina. "Oh, right, Alina. That's the other big update. About 4 months ago, I met someone. Her name's Alina, she's a product designer, lives in my building. We kept running into each other in the gym, awkward head nods, polite hey s. One day she asked if I wanted to grab coffee after a workout and I said yes. No expectations, just coffee. We've been dating for 3 months now. It's been, I don't know how to describe it, easy. She has friends, a full life, hobbies, but none of it involves turning her personal life into content. When I told her in very vague terms about what happened with Katie, she just said, "That sounds exhausting. I'm here now. Let's build something that's just ours." We cook together. We go hiking. We have movie nights where we actually watch the movie instead of scrolling phones. I know that sounds boring to some people, but after everything that happened, boring feels like a gift. I'm not walking on eggshells wondering if something I say will end up dissected in a group chat. I'm not being graded on my emotional availability. I'm just existing, with someone who likes me as I am. Last weekend, we drove down to Big Sur for the weekend. No agenda, no itinerary, just us and the ocean. Alina took a photo of me on the cliffs and said, "You look different than when we first met, lighter." I realized she was right. I do feel lighter. I didn't notice the weight I'd been carrying until it was gone. As for the Katie email, I did respond eventually. I kept it short. "Thank you for this. I'm glad you're in a better place. I wish you well." That was it. I didn't reopen the door, didn't invite further conversation. Alina read it before I sent it and just nodded. Sounds like she's finally in a place where she can face herself. That's good for her. I haven't heard back. I don't expect to. That chapter's closed. So what happened to everyone else? Brooke messaged me a few months ago. She found a new job editing for a true crime podcast, completely unrelated to the lifestyle dating space. She said she's done with that world. Regina tried to relaunch the podcast under a new name, but it didn't gain traction. Word got around about what happened. Sponsors won't touch her. Last I heard, she'd moved back to her hometown somewhere in the Midwest. The original podcast, Unapologetically Her, is just dead. The website's still up but hasn't been updated in almost a year. The social media accounts went silent. It's like it never existed. I've thought a lot about what that whole experience taught me. I used to think I was being judged for who I was, too boring, too calm, too unavailable. But the reality is, I was being judged for not fitting into their story. I wasn't dramatic enough, reactive enough, damaged enough to be good content. And when I didn't play the role they'd cast me in, they tried to force me into it. Here's the thing, though. The qualities they labeled as problems, being calm, thinking before reacting, preferring depth over performance, those are the things that make my relationship with Alina work. She doesn't need me to be a character. She doesn't need our fights to have narrative arcs. She just needs me to show up and be present. I'm in a good place now. Better than good. I found someone who values privacy, authenticity, and building something real instead of performing something shareable. I don't need validation from Reddit or anywhere else. I just needed to write this last bit down, close the loop, and move forward. Thanks for following along, everyone. I'm logging off this throwaway for good. Take care of yourselves.
"You're not going to see your own sister, are you?" my sister mocked. I filed the lawsuit anyway. The next night, my phone exploded with threats and pleas. I never thought I'd have to sue my own sister. But when $7,000 goes missing and your family laughs in your face about it, you learn what family really means. My name is Ronald. I'm 30, work 2 jobs, and have always been the responsible one. My sister Courtney is 27 and has never had to face consequences for anything in her life. Growing up, our dynamic was simple. I was expected to be the rock while she was allowed to be the hurricane. That emergency fund represented 3 years of late nights at my second job. 3 years of saying no to vacations, to nights out, to the small luxuries that make life bearable. 3 years of working weekends at a warehouse while maintaining my day job as an IT specialist. I'd stashed it away for medical emergencies after watching our cousin get financially ruined by an unexpected hospital stay. I wasn't going to let that happen to me. I kept the cash in my apartment, hidden in an old computer tower in my bedroom. My father's distrust of banks had rubbed off on me more than I cared to admit. "Banks steal from you legally," he'd say. The irony isn't lost on me now. Looking back, I should have seen the warning signs with Courtney. They were there, blinking like hazard lights I chose to ignore. The constant, emergency loans she needed. The way she'd dodge calls from numbers I didn't recognize. Her increasingly elaborate excuses for why she was broke by mid-month despite her decent salary. The nervous tapping of her foot when money came up in conversation. 2 months before everything blew up, she'd asked me for $500 to cover her rent. "Just until payday," she promised. I gave it to her, no questions asked. Payday came and went. When I brought it up, she got defensive. "God, are you seriously counting pennies with me? I'm your sister." A week later, she had a new phone, top of the line. When I asked about it, she claimed it was a work expense. I knew her company issued standard mid-range phones to employees, but I swallowed the lie because it was easier than the fight. When I had to fly out for a 2-week work training in Chicago, Courtney volunteered to apartment sit and take care of my cat, Luna. I had security cameras in the living room and kitchen, standard precaution in my neighborhood, but none in the bedroom. I never thought I'd need to protect myself from family. I remember hesitating before leaving. Courtney had been acting strange lately, jumpy, checking her phone constantly, canceling plans last minute. But I chalked it up to her recent breakup and handed over the keys. The moment I walked back into my apartment, something felt off. Luna greeted me at the door, but the place had a different energy. I did a quick scan, everything looked normal enough. Then I went to my bedroom to unpack and check on my emergency fund. My hands went numb. The room started spinning. The side panel of the computer tower was slightly ajar, and the waterproof bag containing my life's safety net was empty. $7,000 gone. I called Courtney immediately, my heart hammering against my ribs. "Hey, did you go into my bedroom while you were watching the place?" I tried to keep my voice steady. "Yeah, why?" Her voice had that same careless lilt it always did. "Did you take money from inside my computer tower?" A pause, then a laugh, an actual laugh. "Yeah, I took it, so what? I had some bills to pay." I could hear her chewing gum on the other end of the line, my voice cracked. "That was my emergency fund, $7,000, Courtney." "So, you're always saying how well you're doing with your fancy IT job. You can just save it up again." I heard her nails tapping against her phone screen. "Besides, I needed it more than you did." "I'm coming over," I said, already grabbing my keys. "Whatever. I'm heading out soon, so hurry up if you're going to be all dramatic about this." When I arrived at her apartment 30 minutes later, she answered the door in new clothes I'd never seen before. Behind her, shopping bags with designer logos sat on her coffee table. "Where's my money, Courtney?" I didn't even step inside. She rolled her eyes. "I told you I spent it on bills and stuff." "Bills and stuff? What bills cost $7,000? She shrugged. "Look, I needed it, okay? You're not going to sue your own sister, are you?" She laughed again, high and mocking. "That would be pathetic, even for you." I called our parents on speakerphone right there in her doorway. Their reaction surprised me, not because they immediately took her side, but because they didn't. There was a long, heavy silence when I told them what happened. "Are you sure?" Mom asked finally, her voice careful. "That's a serious accusation, Ronald. She admitted it just now to my face." Another pause. "Courtney," Dad's voice was strained. "Is this true?" "I was going to pay it back," Courtney said, suddenly defensive. "He's making it sound worse than it is." $7,000, Courtney," I repeated. "My entire emergency fund." Dad sighed a long, exhausted sound. "We need to talk about this as a family. Come over for dinner on Sunday, both of you." "I want my money back before Sunday," I insisted. "Ronald, please," Mom cut in. "Give us time to sort this out. We'll figure it out together." I wanted to believe them. I wanted to think that, for once, my parents would hold Courtney accountable, but a knot in my stomach told me otherwise. Sunday dinner was held at my parents' suburban ranch home, the same house where we'd grown up. Dad pulled me aside before dinner while Mom and Courtney set the table. "Look, your sister's going through a rough patch," he said in a low voice. "She made a mistake, but she's still family." "A mistake? Dad, she stole $7 grand from me." "I know, and that's not okay, but—" He glanced toward the kitchen, lowering his voice even further. "She's got some issues she's dealing with, financial problems. She's in over her head. That's not my problem." "Of course not, but we need to approach this with compassion. Work out a payment plan, maybe." It sounded reasonable enough, not great, but at least they were acknowledging what she'd done. I nodded reluctantly. Then Courtney showed up 20 minutes late, wearing a new blouse and carrying a designer purse that probably cost more than what I made in 2 weeks. Any hope I had for a real resolution evaporated as the evening wore on. Courtney played the victim, teary-eyed 1 minute and defensive the next. My parents kept steering the conversation away from concrete solutions. "We just need to help your sister through this difficult time," Mom said, patting Courtney's hand. "She knows what she did was wrong." "I said I was sorry," Courtney muttered, not looking sorry at all. "Sorry doesn't pay back $7,000, I said." "Why are you being such a hard-ass about this?" Courtney snapped. "It's not like you're starving. You've got your perfect job and your perfect apartment." "That I work 2 jobs to afford?" Dad raised his hands. Everyone calmed down. Yelling won't solve anything. But as dinner dragged on, it became clear that helping Courtney through this difficult time meant sweeping everything under the rug. No concrete repayment plan, no real accountability, just vague promises that she would do better. "Why can't you just let things go?" Dad finally said, frustration edging his voice. "Be the bigger person here." Courtney examined her manicure, also new, and sighed. "God, Ronald is such a killjoy. This is why no one wants to hang out with him." They acted like I was ruining dinner by mentioning the theft of my life savings. I sat there, fork suspended halfway to my mouth, suddenly seeing my family with perfect clarity. I wasn't the responsible one. I was the resource, the ATM that was expected to dispense cash and approval without complaint. Driving home that night, my knuckles turned white on the steering wheel. My jaw clenched so tight my teeth hurt. The Seahawks game blared from the radio, my father's convenient distraction now following me home. I switched it off with a violent jab. The next day, I called my friend Derek, who worked as a paralegal. His reaction was refreshingly uncomplicated. "Dude, that's felony theft," he said. "Family or not, what she did was a crime." "So what do I do?" "Document everything. Text messages, call logs, bank records showing your withdrawals over time. Then talk to a lawyer." "A lawyer against my own sister? Would you rather just kiss $7 grand goodbye? Because that's your alternative here." I spent the next week doing exactly as Derek suggested. I compiled bank statements showing my systematic cash withdrawals over 3 years. I saved the text messages where Courtney admitted taking the money. I even found a receipt for my safe where I'd initially stored the cash before moving it to the computer tower. During this time, my parents flipped between playing mediators and taking Courtney's side. Dad called twice with compromise proposals that involved me basically eating the loss. "What if she pays back half?" he suggested. "That seems fair." "How is that fair? She took all of it." "She's your sister, Ronald. Family helps family." Mom was more emotional, calling me in tears one night. "Courtney told me she's having panic attacks over this," she said, her voice trembling. "Is money really worth hurting your sister this way?" The guilt trips might have worked before, but something had hardened in me. If she's having panic attacks, it's because she stole thousands of dollars and might face consequences for once in her life. The lawyer's office smelled like leather and lemon polish. Ms. Reynolds wore a navy pantsuit and didn't smile much, but her eyes were kind. She listened to my story without interruption, occasionally making notes on a yellow legal pad. "Family cases are always difficult," she said when I finished. "But legally speaking, this is straightforward. Your sister committed theft. The amount makes it grand theft in this state, which is a felony." "I don't want to get her arrested," I said quickly. "I just want my money back." Then we start with a demand letter, formal legal, spelling out exactly what was taken and the consequences if she doesn't return it. Sometimes that's enough to resolve things. I nodded, feeling both relief and dread curl through my stomach. "How much will this cost me?" "My retainer is $1,500, which should cover the demand letter and initial negotiations. If we have to file suit, we'll discuss additional fees." More money I didn't have, more sacrifice. But as I signed the retainer agreement, something inside me shifted. This wasn't just about money anymore. It was about refusing to be the family doormat for one more day. The demand letter went out on a Tuesday. By Tuesday night, my phone was blowing up. Not just with texts from Courtney, but from my parents too. They'd gone from reluctant mediators to full-on defenders of Courtney in record time. Courtney's texts oscillated wildly between rage and desperation. 10:42 p.m. Courtney, what is wrong with you? 10:43 p.m. Courtney, a lawyer. Are you serious right now? 10:57 p.m. Courtney, answer your phone, you coward. 11:13 p.m. Courtney, you're going to regret this, I swear to God. 11:47 p.m. Courtney, please Ronald, I'm sorry. Please call me back, I'm freaking out. Then came the voicemails. You pathetic little worm, you think you can threaten me? I'll tell everyone what you did in high school, don't test me. Followed an hour later by, please Ronald, I'm begging you, I can't pay it all back right now. Please call me, I'm scared. My parents were next. This is your father, call me back immediately, you've crossed a line. Honey, it's Mom, what are you doing? This family has been through enough without lawyers getting involved. Please reconsider. Then the flying monkeys arrived. Aunts, uncles, even my cousin Tyler, who I hadn't spoken to in years, all calling to check in and remind me of the importance of family. My Aunt Sandra actually flew in from Phoenix to talk some sense into me. I agreed to meet her at a coffee shop, mostly out of curiosity. Your parents are devastated, she said, stirring her latte aggressively. Your father hasn't slept in days. Because his daughter stole $7,000 or because I won't pretend it didn't happen? Because his son is threatening his daughter with legal action. What kind of family does that? The kind where one member steals from another, apparently. She leaned forward, voice dropping to a dramatic whisper. Your sister has problems, Ronald, real problems. This isn't helping. What problems? Shopping addiction? Entitlement? Being spoiled rotten her entire life. Aunt Sandra's face flushed. It's not my place to say. Then it's not my problem to solve, I replied, standing up to leave. Thanks for the coffee. That evening my father called again. His voice had lost its thunder, replaced with something I rarely heard, fear. If you go through with this, you're no longer part of this family. Do you understand me? The threat that was supposed to break me only made things clearer. I understood I wasn't really part of this family the moment you all laughed about Courtney stealing my savings. You ungrateful, he started, then stopped himself. Think very carefully about what you're doing, son. I have you? I hung up and blocked his number, then my mother's, then Courtney's. The silence that followed was the most peaceful thing I'd experienced in weeks. The lawsuit process wasn't as straightforward as I'd hoped. After receiving the formal complaint, Courtney hired a lawyer, paid for by my parents, of course. Her first move was denying she'd taken the full amount. My client admits to borrowing some money, her lawyer stated in the response, but the amount claimed is grossly exaggerated. When that didn't work, they tried delays, requests for extensions, scheduling conflicts, anything to drag out the process, probably hoping I'd give up from exhaustion or run out of money to pay my lawyer. Ms. Reynolds saw through it all. Classic stall tactics, she said. They're hoping you'll cave. I didn't. The first court hearing was for a preliminary motion. Courtney showed up with both my parents, all three dressed like they were attending a funeral. She refused to look at me directly, staring at the floor as her lawyer argued that this was a simple family misunderstanding that didn't belong in court. The judge, a woman in her 60s with silver-rimmed glasses and a no-nonsense demeanor, wasn't buying it. Either the money was taken or it wasn't, she said, cutting through the lawyer's flowery speech. Based on the evidence presented, including the defendant's own admission via text message, I'm denying the motion to dismiss. Outside the courtroom, Courtney finally approached me, her eyes red-rimmed. I can't pay it all back right now, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I don't have it. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Then I remembered the new clothes, the designer purse, the manicure. Where did it go, Courtney? What was so important that you had to steal from me? She looked away. I had debts. What kind of debts? She didn't answer. During discovery, the truth came out. Ms. Reynolds uncovered the real reason behind Courtney's desperate need for cash, gambling debts. Not just casual losses, but tens of thousands owed to the kind of people who don't send polite demand letters when you don't pay. My parents knew. They'd been helping her pay these people off for months, but the debts kept growing. When they couldn't keep up, she turned to my emergency fund. They didn't just steal my money, I realized, sitting in Ms. Reynolds' office reviewing the evidence. They put me at risk without even telling me. These are dangerous people, Ms. Reynolds confirmed. Your sister's in a serious situation. My phone, which I'd unblocked for legal communications, lit up with a text from my mother. How could you do this when your sister's in danger? I texted back. How could you put me at risk without even telling me? Even after the evidence came to light, Courtney and my parents tried one last Hail Mary. They offered a settlement, $3,500 now, the rest when she's able to pay it. Which means never, Ms. Reynolds translated. They're still hoping to get you to settle for half, I declined. The court proceedings were surreal. The polished wood of the courtroom benches, the echoing acoustics, the judge's measured voice. It all felt like a movie I was watching rather than living. Courtney sat across the aisle, no designer clothes today. Her face was pale, her usual confidence replaced by darting eyes and nervous fidgeting. The judge listened to both sides, reviewed the evidence, and spent approximately 3 seconds reaching her decision. The evidence clearly shows that the defendant took $7,000 from the plaintiff without permission. Ms. Sullivan, did you take this money? Courtney's voice was barely audible. Yes, Your Honor. And do you have it to return? Not all of it. The judge nodded as if she'd expected this answer. Then the court rules in favor of the plaintiff. The defendant will repay the full amount plus legal fees. The court will issue an order to freeze the defendant's accounts until arrangements for repayment are made. Courtney's face crumpled. My parents sitting behind her looked like they'd aged 10 years. Outside the courtroom, they approached me. Mom's eyes were red-rimmed, Dad's shoulders slumped in a way I'd never seen before. Please, Mom whispered. She can't handle her accounts being frozen. She still has rent to pay. She should have thought of that before taking my money, I replied, surprised by the steadiness in my voice. We can work something out, Dad said, his authoritative tone now gone. A payment plan between us, no need for the courts to be involved anymore. There's already a judgment, it's done. Ronald, please, my mother grabbed my arm. We're family. I gently removed her hand. Exactly, and family shouldn't steal from family or cover it up or blame the victim. In the months that followed, Courtney struggled to meet the court-ordered payments. She sold her designer bags and clothes on consignment. She moved out of her luxury apartment into a studio half the size. She took a second job as a delivery driver. I watched her Instagram presence dwindle from daily posts about brunches and shopping trips to near silence. Through mutual friends, I heard she was seeing a therapist for her gambling addiction, that her new place was sparse but clean, that she was learning to cook instead of ordering takeout. When the final payment hit my account, the full $7,000 plus $2,300 in legal fees, I dropped the case immediately as promised. I kept my word. They hadn't kept theirs. The invitations started coming a few weeks later. Sunday dinner, Mom's birthday lunch, a casual barbecue, text messages with forced cheerfulness. We miss you. Family game night won't be the same without you. Come on, water under the bridge, right? I never responded, never explained, I just didn't show up. 6 months after the court case, I'd rebuilt my emergency fund completely. I'd moved to a new apartment with better security. I'd started dating someone who respected boundaries and believed in consequences. I'd found peace in setting limits and walking away from people who couldn't respect them. I ran into Courtney at the grocery store on a random Tuesday. She looked different, thinner, less polished, but somehow more present. Her eyes, when they met mine, showed recognition but not entitlement. Ronald, she said, adjusting her shopping basket. How are you? I'm good, I replied. You? Getting there, she paused. I'm 9 months clean from gambling. That's good. An awkward silence stretched between us. Well, she finally said, take care of yourself. You too, Courtney. We moved past each other like distant acquaintances, which is exactly what we had become. Mom still tries sometimes. A text on my birthday. A Christmas card with a family photo I'm noticeably absent from. Dad hasn't reached out at all, his pride won't allow it. I'm okay with that. The silence between us speaks volumes about who he really is, who they all are. I got my $7,000 back. But what I really gained was worth so much more. The knowledge that I deserve respect, that my boundaries matter, that family isn't just about blood, but about how you treat each other. Sometimes standing up for yourself means standing alone. But I'd rather stand alone with my dignity than surrounded by people who see me as nothing but a resource to be drained. They say blood is thicker than water, but so is maple syrup. Doesn't mean I want to drown in it.